Well, good evening, Pharmacist Ben. How are you doing this fine
Good
day?
evening. Long time no see,
It
Michelle.
has been, yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you so much for everything you're doing too, by the way.
yeah, good. So today, Pharmacist Ben is going to be giving us some in-depth information on how to slow down cognitive decline as we age, and he'll be giving us some ideas about foods and nutrients and just general lifestyle.
Yeah, general lifestyle. One of the things I like to do when I'm going to the health food store or Whole Foods um, and I go to the bulk section and get my flax seeds or my almonds or whatever, they have these little codes you're supposed to write on the car, write on a sticker, and then you put in the bag. I memorize those. I
That's
always
brilliant.
memorize. Sometimes I'll have 3 or 4, and I'll just memorize them. I have a little trick for memorizing numbers. Also, I like history. I'm a history buff, so I use history to point to specific numbers, like the number 6342. 63 means something to me. 1963 means something to me. 1942 means something to me. So I kind of blend them that way, and then I'll combine it with little association tricks.
Oh,
Also,
good.
memorizing your credit cards,
Yes.
memorizing your phone numbers. These days, everything's on in your contact list on the phone. If you go out of your way to memorize phone numbers or addresses, credit card, any kind of numbers to memorize will exercise your brain. The brain responds to exercise like any other system in the body. It's anti-fragile in the sense that when it's stressed, you get more neural connect within parameters, not overstressed, but just the right amount. You get more neural connections, more blood supply, more oxygen directed to the brain. There's a use it or lose it kind of phenomena for the brain, as well as the skin and the muscles and the heart. And that's just how nature works. Use it or lose it. That's why being sedentary is the new smoking. I don't know if you heard that, but the fact that we sit on our butts all day is one of the reasons why we're not as healthy as we should be head to toe. So
Right.
working on the brain by doing things like memorizing, doing crossword puzzles, learning a new language. Here's another little trick for you. Brush your teeth with the opposite hand. If you ordinarily brush your teeth with your right hand, brush your teeth with your left hand. Or if you ordinarily write with your right hand, try writing with your left hand, or do anything with the opposite hand. That will help develop both sides of the brain. So there's little tricks you could do, exercising and to put a stress on the brain so that you get more blood and more electrical energy, more oxygen, etc. Secondly, water. When you drink water, you dilute your blood supply. The brain takes up 20 to 25% of the blood supply, heads to the brain. The brain is only about 2% of the body, but it's about 20 or 25% of our nutrients and 20 or 25% somewhere in there of our oxygen supply. So it's an energy hog. It's an oxygen hog. It's a nutrition hog. So nutrition, we'll talk about that in a second. That's going to be very important. But oxygen is very important. Water is very important. Diluting the blood with water, making sure that you're breathing slowly and deeply. Most of us are chronically suffocating, even me. I have to remind myself that it's time to breathe because I forget, and all of a sudden I'll catch myself not breathing deeply, and I'll have to remind myself to breathe. So it's something you have to constantly practice, constantly remind yourself of, pretty much like nutrition. One of the funniest questions I get, Michelle, is people ask, how long do I have to stay on this nutrition for? And I always think to myself,
Yes.
what a crazy question. How long do you have to eat for? Oh, you could just only have to eat for the next week, and then you don't have to eat anymore. I mean, what is that? That's crazy to me. Nutrition is
Yes.
so misunderstood that we sometimes think that we can get off our nutrients. There's going to be a time when we don't need our vitamin C or vitamin E or B complex or whatever. So making sure you're breathing correctly, drinking water. Talk about nutrition here in a second. Exercising the brain. And then there's things you want to stay away from. What do you suppose the most important food component that we want to stay away from is when it comes to brain health or dementia or cognitive decline?
Oh,
Sugar. Yes. Dementia is said to be type 3 diabetes. Number one, blood sugar will damage the neurons and the blood vessels in the brain and the lymphatic vessels in the brain for that matter as well, all of which will compound to cause cognitive decline and mental health and brain health issues. Another thing you want to do is don't burn the midnight oil. Get your sleep. The brain cleans itself out when we sleep. The brain has a sewage system, a waste control system called the glymphatics, not the lymphatics, but the glymph lymphatics, the lymph system. The lymph system is the lymph system of the brain and drains out toxins, and it works when we sleep. And so sleep is very important. Napping, if you're so inclined to take naps, naps can help as well. Exercise, moving your body physically, even if it's something like just taking walks, especially not to mention, getting on a treadmill or exercise bike or doing something more intensely. Anything you could do to improve circulation is going to improve brain health. So staying away from sugar, also staying away from excitotoxins. Those are chemicals in processed foods. With a term excitotoxin means excito and toxin. Excito because it makes your brain really excited. Toxin because it's toxic to the brain. MSG is the classic example of an excitotoxin, but there's lots of them that go under the name or on the ingredient that go under the term natural flavors. And natural flavors typically is a disguised term for these excitotoxins. In fact, just staying away from processed food is probably a good idea. Staying away from fried and processed fats. We did a whole, myself and my friend AJ did a whole Pharmacist Bright Bites on the problem with processed fats, heated fats, distorted fats, deep fried fats. Pretty much all processed foods are going to have some kind of processed fat in there because fat helps flavors spread. So food manufacturers love putting fats in things like cakes and candies, and not candies, but cakes and pies and processed food, Pop-Tarts and such, because it helps flavors spread. These processed fats are a hidden cause of disease, not just in foods, but also in formulas like baby formula or Ensure. A friend of mine was just in the hospital and they gave her boxes of Ensure every day. I don't know if you know what Ensure is. I don't know if you have Ensure over there and down under. Ensure is like a nutritional drink made by a drug company, and it's supposed to have all your nutrients. But the second or third ingredient is these processed fats. Not to mention GMO fats. Forget the GMO, that's bad enough. But then you got the whole processing, which distorts the fats. The brain is a fatty organ, and it's going to be a source of deposition. The body's going to try to deposit and utilize these fats in the brain. Also, do you know this? I bet you didn't know this, Michelle. Processed fats are actually in the V's that you inject. I can't say what it is because we're going to get kicked off here, but the V's that you inject. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Including the latest V that they don't tell you about. There's processed fats right in the V that you're putting right in your bloodstream. Right? Did you know that?
I didn't.
Nobody talks about that. That's aside from the antigen, the actual stimulus for the antibodies, the stimulus for the immune system. There's also processed inflammatory fats that you're sticking right into your bloodstream when you get the V. Wow. So staying away from processed fats and all its disguises. If you are doing fats, which we all should be doing, and if you find yourself having to eat processed fats for whatever reason, or you're just indulging in processed fats, vitamin E is not only protective against processed fats, it's also one of the brain's most important nutrients. Remember, the brain's a fatty organ, right? Yes. And so it's going to be very susceptible to damage from fats, and it's going to be very susceptible to protection from fats by using fatty vitamins and antioxidants, especially that come from pigments like berries and pomegranate and various fruits and vegetables. Those antioxidants will actually protect your brain, like vitamin E protects your brain. Vitamin E is nature's fat protective molecule. And then, of course, there's wonderful nutrients for cognitive decline. Everybody should be supplementing, in my opinion, but especially elderly people. Even if it's something as simple as this guy right here, even if it's just the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. I often tell this story. My dad suffered from dementia and got pretty severe towards the end of his life. So I would go visit him in the nursing home. And when I would visit him, I'd always smuggle in some BTT. And I would make like I was drinking it, and I would hand it to him, and he would drink it. And right in front of my eyes, I could see him getting clarity. Right in front of my eyes, I could see he wasn't 100% improved. He wasn't his old self, but I could see he was starting to become more functional. And then over the course of an hour, 2 hours, I was hanging out with him less and less. And then when I left, the nurses wouldn't let him have it. So I would come back and I'd have to give it more, and I could see what it was doing for him. So let me tell you something. We're coming to Christmas right now. Everybody out there who's got a friend, a relative, a loved one in a nursing home with dementia, this is the best Christmas gift you could ever give them. give them the gift of Beyond Tangy Tangerine. It's incredible for several reasons. Number one, it's got the wonderful nutrients for the brain, including thiamine, the B complex, especially thiamine and niacin. And it's also got the plant-derived minerals, which are very important for brain health, plus vitamin C and magnesium and a few other nutrients. So that alone is going to make a difference in their mental health. But there are other nutrients. Now, you'll find these in the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack. And you notice that the brain and heart go together, right? It's called the Brain and Heart Pack. That's because of the importance of the blood supply, the cardiovascular system for brain health. So we call it the Brain and Heart Pack. Get them on that. Some individual nutrients that are important for the brain include your fats. Remember, we just talked about fats. So ultimate EFAs, I'd be taking extra. I usually recommend people take 9 of them a day. If you have dementia or cognitive issues, or you're worried about cognitive issues, take more. Take 12 or 15 ultimate EFAs a day. That's number one. Number two, make sure you're getting your ultimate niacin. Niacin deficiency disease is called pellagra. And one of the symptoms of pellagra is dementia. So you got to wonder, how many people with dementia are just dealing with a plain old niacin deficiency? Do you ever think about that? And by the way, niacin is one of the most important nutrients for stabilizing blood sugar, and it turns out that nutrients that are important for protecting or for processing blood sugar, protecting the brain from blood sugar, are independently important for brain health. So things like niacin, very important for the brain. Vitamin B1, thiamine, incredibly important for the brain and for blood sugar. You'll get both of those in the Beyond Tangy Tangerine and also in the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack. Selenium plays a very important role in brain health. There are proteins that depend on selenium and enzymes that depend on selenium that are important for the brain. Magnesium, we mentioned that earlier. That's going to be important for brain health. Vitamin K is going to be important for brain health. And then there are also foods that are important. Eggs. Eat your eggs. Doc eats like, I don't know, some crazy amount of eggs a day, 7 eggs a day or a dozen eggs a day or something like that. You don't necessarily need that much, but you should probably be eating eggs on a regular basis, if not daily, 5 or 6 times a week, if not every day. Eggs are a source of course, cholesterol. Cholesterol is very important for the brain, but don't overcook your eggs. In fact, it's best to eat your eggs raw so they're not cooked at all. And that way you'll have access to the full spectrum of enzymes and fats, as well as the vitamins and the nutrients and the cholesterol without disturbing them. Remember, disturbing fats by heating them creates toxic compounds. Fats go from good fats to bad fats by virtue of the amount of heat that you apply to them. And that's why I recommend people either eat their eggs soft boiled or poached or raw. And before you turn your nose up at raw eggs, they're actually quite delicious if you mix them with something. They taste nice and creamy, especially when you mix them with something like almond milk and water. You crack an egg in there, you get a nice creamy combination. I like chocolate almond milk. I throw in some blueberries, which are also, as I mentioned earlier, very good for brain health. And then I crack an egg, and then if I want a meal, I'll throw in some TMR shake or Michelle Wallach's birthday cake shake. Thank you, Michelle, for gifting me with that last week, which is quite delicious. Sometimes I'll mix my TMR with my birthday cake shake, and putting an egg in there not only contributes protein and cholesterol and zinc and essential fats and various vitamins and phospholipids. I mean, eggs are truly a power food, but the egg brings everything together so it's nice and creamy when it's raw. So raw egg into your smoothie. Another really important brain food is fish. Why? Fats, fatty fish. Fatty fish contain DHA and EPA. These are 2 derivatives of omega-3 fats. They're also found in eggs, by the way. And DHA and EPA that are found in fatty fish are also very important for the brain. Best to steam your fish if you can do it. If you're going to cook your fish, grilling is a little problematic. Steaming or poaching is probably the best way to go. I know we all love our grilled meats and grilled fish and charcoal grilled hamburgers and such. But really, the best way to do your meats and your fish is to steam or poach. Now, I don't think you can really. I'm not a big meat eater. I don't think you can really poach your meat. You pretty much have to cook your meat in a frying pan or a grill. But you really want to minimize the amount of heat that you apply to your fish or to your steak or burgers or whatever kind of meat you use. Oysters are a particularly good brain food because they're raw. And so you're getting those fats, the wonderful fats and the wonderful protein raw assuming you're eating your oysters on the half shell, which is great. Oysters on the half shell are one of the most amazing power foods you could ever enjoy. Algae and seaweed are also very important for the brain. Of course, we know a great algae seaweed product. We call it what? Fucoid Z. Yeah,
Yes.
Fucoid Z is a wonderful source of those nutrients, those fatty nutrients. See, we don't even talk about that. We have so much upside to our products. We don't even talk about everything there is to talk about. But the Fucoid Z, in addition to the wonderful fucoidin that you're going to get, will also supply you with some omega fats, particularly omega-3 fats. Hard to find omega-3 fats for your brain. And speaking of omega-3 fats, flax seeds are another wonderful brain food. Not only a great source of omega fats for the brain, but also a great source of vitamin E for your brain. Not to mention they help clean out your intestine, which we'll talk about here in just a sec, because that's another major place in the body you want to work on if you're dealing with dementia, you want to prevent dementia or cognitive decline. I like grinding my flax seeds. You always have to grind your flax seeds, by the way. And I like grinding my flax seeds and putting them in water and then drinking them. You don't necessarily need to, but if you do it, it's very filling and actually quite tasty, especially if you add some spices. I like to add cinnamon and clove. Sometimes if I'm feeling really rambunctious, I'll throw a little stevia in there to sweeten it up, or some honey. Super delicious, super filling, great source of protein, wonderful breakfast, wonderful before meals, and definitely one of the most incredible ways to nutriate your gray matter, your brain. And then there's the whole digestive component. We talked about the I think I mentioned type 3 diabetes. I don't remember if I mentioned that or not.
Yes, you did.
Type 3 diabetes, that's what they call Alzheimer's dementia because of this sugar reaction, the glycation reaction to the vessels in the brain. But don't forget about the digestive system. Intestinal toxicity will end up going to the brain and cause brain fog. You can actually have a condition called leaky brain syndrome. We all heard of leaky gut syndrome. Have you heard of leaky brain syndrome? Leaky brain syndrome is when the blood vessels, the brain has a lot of blood vessels in it, but those blood vessels are tight. They're closed. They don't leak because you don't want to have stuff leaking from the blood into the brain. They call that the blood-brain barrier. I don't know if you ever heard that term.
Yes.
The blood-brain barrier is the way the blood vessels in the brain are kind of closed off. They don't leak, so the toxins and stuff in the blood doesn't get into the brain. But over the course of time, as we indulge in problem foods, especially gluten and lectins and these kinds of foods that cause inflammatory problems at the level of the intestine, the same thing happens to the blood vessels in the brain, and you can have leaky brain syndrome. There's a wonderful book called Grain Brain by a guy named David Perlmutter, I believe. I think David Perlmutter wrote Grain Brain. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he wrote it. And he talks all about this, the idea, everybody knows about the problems with grain for the digestive system and the immune system, but we don't often talk about it for the brain. So if you have intestinal problems, you're eventually, and they're not corrected, eventually you're going to have brain problems too. The classic manifestation, this is Parkinson's disease. And every time I see somebody with Parkinson's disease, a celebrity or, an athlete, somebody who's had a lot of brain injury, now they're dealing with Parkinson's, I think to myself, I can help that guy. And I know I can help them because I've done it many times. And I know I can help them because Parkinson's disease is a manifestation of toxicity in the blood, even to entering from a leaky gut and SIBO and dysbiosis. Today, and I've been talking about this for years because it just makes sense. It just made sense. But now one of the treatments, the medical treatments for Parkinson's is fecal transplants. You know what that is, Michelle? Fecal transplant?
Yeah.
That's considered to be part of the Parkinson's protocol. Why? Because SIBO and dysbiosis, it helps correct gut bacteria. So you don't necessarily need to have a whole full-blown fecal transplant, but that's just to emphasize the importance of intestinal health and correcting leaky gut issues and taking care of addressing SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and all the causes of intestinal health and intestinal disease and leaky gut are really important for brain health, for folks who are dealing with dementia. And if you're not sure how to handle that, eat less food, particularly less processed food. And then the second point, and that's the first point in the triangle of disease, of course. There's a very important gut-brain axis, by the way, that we're now starting to elucidate and figure out the relationship between the gut and the brain. Bacteria in the intestine make special chemicals that make us happy. Literally, they make happy chemicals, relaxing chemicals, anti-seizure chemicals, sleep chemicals. They're made by bacteria, and they're transmuted a little bit. They're tweaked a little bit, and they go to your brain. And your brain is the beneficiary of these bacterial secretions. So working on intestinal health, working on the blood sugar system. And then the third point on the triangle of disease, of course, is cortisol. Under conditions of chronic secretion of cortisol, number one, your blood sugar is not going to be controlled. Number two, you're going to have digestive issues because cortisol is important for one of cortisol's effects is slowing down digestion. Number three, you're going to have thyroid problems because hypercortisolism leads to hypothyroidism, and the thyroid is important for the brain as well. So keeping, and then cortisol on its own will redirect blood flow from the front of your brain to the back of your brain where your fight or flight centers are. So stabilizing cortisol by using nutrients, fatty nutrients especially, will help stabilize cortisol. Vitamins A and E and omega-3 essential fatty acids can help stabilize cortisol. Keeping your blood sugar under control. There's a very important connection between elevated blood sugar and cortisol as we go through what I call the high blood sugar, low blood sugar, roller coaster, high, low. Cortisol kicks in. Stress hormone kicks in. Stress hormone gives you emergency energy. Also, that there's feedback in the other direction. So messed up blood sugar will mess up your cortisol, but messed up cortisol will mess up your blood sugar. It goes both ways. And if you are dealing with, this is just as an aside, if you're dealing with blood sugar problems and you can't figure out how to control them, you're on your sweeties, you're making sure you're eating as best as you can, staying away from fast-burning sugar, and you just can't keep your sugar under control, your blood sugar under control, blame cortisol and start addressing hypercortisolism. It's a known fact that Cushing's disease, which is a disease of hyperadrenal disease, is a hypercortisol disease, is linked to disruptions in blood sugar or dysglycemia. So making sure you're working on adrenal health, making sure you're stabilizing cortisol, slow deep breathing techniques, muscle relaxation, psychological relaxation, getting enough sleep, and using your de-stress and your B-complex vitamins. Your B-complex vitamins are said to be your anti-stress vitamins. We have a product called De-Stress, and you can also get your Bs in the Healthy Start Pack and the Beyond Tangy Tangerine. And vitamin B5, I just wrote a little blog post about vitamin B5. Pantothenic acid is especially important for adrenal health. And speaking of my blog posts and my articles, Michelle, pop on here. We're going to talk about what do we have coming up for folks in the next 2 weeks or so.
Yes, we're going to have a private subscription to Ben's highly informative newsletter coming up.
Yes.
We should have that up and running in a couple of weeks. So
and it's going to be very nominally priced, something like $3 or $4 a month. And you'll get all kinds of great information, a lot of the information that we talk about here, but extra information as well. People always ask me, is there a recording for this? Or, where can I get the transcript, etc. Our newsletter will feature lots of this great information plus extra information, because I don't always remember to say everything. So when I write it down, you'll get extra information. Plus, keep your eyes peeled, because we're actually going to have a membership. I don't know if you already talked about our membership service. We're going to have a membership service as well, where you get private consultations with me and where you get private videos that Michelle and I do. Were you going to say something, Michelle?
Yes. Well, on the membership, we are going to have a very comprehensive e-course that Ben will be offering in that membership site. So, and there'll be a very informative ebook that comes with it. So, keep a lookout for that.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
And this will go up. We'll post this up here so everybody can review it and sign up for our newsletter. And then as soon as we have our classes, sign up for those as well. Michelle, thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing. And,
thank you, Ben.
We'll see you soon.
And if you're looking for any of the products that Ben has been speaking about, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, pharmacistbenjaminfuchs.com. Just jump onto that website and you'll be able to find them. Just put the name of it in the search bar or click on the QR codes that you've been seeing popping up throughout the video.